Welcome back to Planets in the First House, and this will be the second part of a 4-part chart delineation session. And I'm Jodie Forrest, and that's how to get in touch with me if you want to. Brief introduction: I've been a professional astrologer for 42 years. I write books, I write articles, I speak at conferences, and I am on the faculty here at the International Academy of Astrology. And notice that this graphic does not have Pluto, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and nothing there. But we will be talking about all 10 astrological planets for this series. Whoever designed this template must have agreed with the demotion of Pluto from a planet to a dwarf planet. And I suspect that's why they didn't include its image below, but we will be talking about it, probably the last of the 4 sessions. Also, I have a little bit of cleanup, I think, to do from last time. We were talking about Angelina Jolie's chart with Venus in the first house, and I am not sure I included a good enough picture. And this is her when she was considerably younger. I'd say early to mid-20s, and this is her quite recently, from the look of it. She may very well have had some cosmetic interventions, I don't know, or she may not have done anything at all. She's a beautiful, beautiful woman. And with Venus in Cancer right smack on the first house, it intrigues me that she's well known for a rather large set of lips. The later picture, they seem to have lost some volume, which I think is a normal part of the aging process. And this is her chart. And Venus is partile with the ascendant. It is not it's not perfect, but it's partile. And she is certainly a great beauty and renowned for it. And let me make this a little smaller. I want to talk again a bit about what the ascendant is and what first house planets do to modify or amplify it. The ascendant is your mask. It's your
Jodie,
yes?
you should be able to use this at the bottom of the PowerPoint. There should be a place to display the whole screen. If you scroll down, it's in your control PowerPoint. You go move your mouse to the bottom.
What is the bottom?
No, in the center.
In the center?
No, not in the center, down the bottom. Scroll right down to the bottom.
I am
Not on
scrolled
the
down
line.
to the bottom.
That's it. Do you see a little, what looks like a projector and an icon at the bottom?
Well, that might be... No, that's trash.
You squeeze it in and made it smaller.
I'm sorry?
So it fit in the screen. Just a minute ago, you did. Down the bottom, below that, you should find a little toolbar, and one of them's got like a little TV screen.
Well, I see a screen.
Yeah, there it is.
But it's the trash.
No, not the...
When I move this, well...
It should be, you can just press a button. What the problem is, that's it.
That's it.
The ascendant is sort of like the wrapping that your chart came with. It's the energy clothing, the energy uniform that your chart ideally dresses in, because behaving like your ascendant is centering and it's grounding. It's a streamlined social personality that handles an awful lot of our basic, not very deep human interactions. The barista, the cashier, the people at the desk when you're checking in for something, they are probably not destined to be your best friends, but you still need a working persona to communicate with them in a way that doesn't leave you feeling overexposed or underexposed. The ascendant has a lot to do with how poised we are, and you have probably noticed that younger people tend to be less poised than older people. They're a little more goofy, they're a little more awkward, they're somewhat more likely to put their foot in their mouth. And we learn the ascendant over time. It's learned behavior over time. And it develops as we mature and as we grow more poised. But little kids don't have the ascendant working yet. A friend of mine adopted a little boy, and when he was about 5, he was in daycare, and everyone was going around the room saying their first and middle names. And they got to Ryan, and he said very proudly, "My name is Ryan, and my middle name is Trouble." He had heard his parents say that to him, and he just assumed that was his real middle name. And it's funny and cute and appealing with kids, But it takes time and practice to feel poised, grounded in your own identity. You might be a quiet person, but you're not painfully, debilitatingly shy. If you do a good job with your ascendant, you feel at ease in your skin. You're comfortable with yourself. It's what people see or sense when they first meet you. And it's an outer self that either protects the rest of the chart or expresses the rest of the chart or mediates between your inside world and the outside world. I like to think of it as our entry vehicle. It's what was rising in the east when you took your first breath. So it introduces you to this life in this world. And I think the ascendant is sort of like a vehicle that we ride in as we explore the territory of our lives. In fact, you can look at the ascendant and planets in it and aspects to it and design an imaginary vehicle that this person is riding around in during the course of his or her life. The vehicle is designed for the terrain. In other words, if you have an Aries ascendant, your vehicle, your body language, your persona, your mask, what other people see when they first see you or sense when they first meet you, should be plucky, dynamic, direct, forthright, energetic, and willing to take a risk here and there. Likewise, if I were to design an energy vehicle, it would be probably an RV that you took to go over rough ground or rocky ground. So it let you explore adventurous areas of the world where you would be an adventurer to go to. And with Aries rising, you need challenges. You need to prove to yourself that you have a strong will. You need to leave the world with a much stronger will than you had when you got here. So with the ascendant, the map is the territory. There's a lot of, I guess in the 90s, I was hearing a lot, the map is not the territory. In other words, theory is not the same as really doing it. But with the ascendant, it's a little different. If you have Aries rising, you have an Aries vehicle that was designed to venture into Aries territory, which will center you and help you express all the rest of your chart through your ascendant. Everything you are, all the rest of your chart, communicates to the outside world through your ascendant. And it sometimes gets to put a little ascendant spin on something. And the outside world comes into you, your ascendant, through the filter of your ascendant. It's related to your body, which contains you. It's an envelope that contains you, and you move around through the world by means of your body. The ascendant, planets in the first house become part of the ascendant. They're part of that person's persona. They show up in that person. You always see or sense somebody's first house planets. The actual technical ascendant would be the degree of the sign that was rising in the east when you were born, on the first house cusp. I think of it, the whole first house, as being like a wardrobe that contains all of the costumes that that particular ascendant might need to use in its journey through the world. And first house planets also add to the costumes that we can wear. The more planets we have in the first house, the more different personas we can adapt according to the situations that we are in. The person may not look like old predictions or descriptions of what somebody would look like with that planet in that house, because the gene pool is a whole lot bigger than it used to be. But something about that person's energy expresses both the sign on the first house cusp and any planets in the first. In an ideal world, the person can choose what first house energy they want to present in different situations. Mercury in the first house. These people need to learn to communicate really well and clearly and often. They need to study or experience what interests them. Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, folklorist, said, "Follow your bliss," but with Mercury in the first house, it's follow your curiosity, or let your curiosity help you navigate that vehicle. They need an interesting, colorful life full of fascinating experiences. And they need to remember that ideally communication flows both ways, so they become good listeners as well as good speakers. They need to be patient with people whose minds don't work quite as fast as theirs do. And that's important. Mercury moves fast. The images of Mercury, the god Mercury, he'll be wearing a winged helmet and winged shoes. Thoughts move fast, and people with Mercury in the first house tend to move fast and be sort of streamlined, physically or mentally. Typically, a Mercury in the first house person needs to do some work to become a little bit less scattered and a little bit more organized. Oh, great. That's not what I meant to have happen. Why did it jump to the very end? Let's try this again. Do you have the big screen again?
Not yet, no.
You should.
You just got your screen.
I probably need to reshare.
I think so. I'm listening to the Mercury in the first house. That's me.
Oh,
But it's serious in the piece where, so as a child,
this should be screen shared, and now I will make it bigger.
is screen shared. That's the main one down the bottom.
Can you see it?
We can see it. That's it now.
And they need to develop a mercurial persona. Articulate, curious, interested, interesting, quick on their feet. What kind of vibes, to borrow a 1960s or 70s word, do you think these people need to emit, broadcast forth, in order to feel centered and not too closed down and not too open? If we overdo our ascendant, we can never let our hair down. If we underdo the ascendant, we tend to feel a little naked and vulnerable a lot of the time because we don't have that streamlined social personality who's handling our outside interactions for us. What might you notice about someone with a first house Mercury? Anybody? Well, are they more likely to be...
Talkative.
Yes, talkative, definitely. And average weight or thin, in my experience. That can change, I suppose, with age and various dietary conditions. But typically, Mercury in the first house people have the greyhound version of nervous systems. The mind is quick, and typically a Mercury in the first house person is in motion a lot of the time, often bright. And Mercury means a lot of different things. Information processing, studying, how your mind works, what you notice around you, mental learning as opposed to muscle memory, curiosity, busyness, experiential learning, the life of the mind, gossip, commerce, trade, contracts. Every form of communication and media we can think of, and it will rule the ones we haven't invented yet too, I bet. Open-mindedness, lack of prejudice, that's an important part of a healthy Mercury. Attention to detail, ability to multitask, and frequently there is a liking of using language, an interest in language, of having fun with language, which probably helps them learn to communicate. Do you see a picture of a woman's face?
Yes.
This is my late friend Sarah, and this is about what she looked like when I first met her. She was a rock and roll / punk drummer, and an unusual woman, to say the least, and she decided that she wanted her hair to look like the hair of a Dr. Seuss character. She was in her 20s, so she got some sort of industrial strength hairspray and started, oh gosh, it's so hard to explain. Her hair was kind of spiked up and gaunt. And definitely sometimes it looked like a Dr. Seuss character. Or if you looked at her shadow, she seemed to have an awful lot of hair poking out from her head in all directions. What interested me about this is that hair is supposed, in Jungian dream analysis, shows up as an extension of the person's thoughts. My analyst said that frequently her analysans dreamed that she was cutting or fixing or arranging their hair, which in dream language meant that she was helping them with their thinking, understand their thinking better. So for a first house Mercury person, I think having the hair look kind of wired fits that ancient archetype. And can you see Sarah's chart? I think I'd probably...
Yes.
Look at Mercury right smack on an Aquarian ascendant. Also look at all that Aquarius juice. Aquarians of 1962 and 1964 sometimes end up with this kind of uber Aquarian chart. Sarah was indeed tall and very, very skinny, except for her hair. She had fat hair. She was very clever, very good with her hands. She was interested in woodworking and puppetry besides playing the drums. She kicked those drums very, very, very hard. Mars in the first and Saturn in the first. She was committed to kicking those drums hard. And an excellent rock drummer. You wouldn't have believed looking at her that she could get that much sound. But she was, however much she weighed, it was all muscle.
On top of the...
Go ahead.
Just... Okay.
What were you telling me? You weren't hearing me? Walter?
I can hear you.
Okay. I wasn't sure what you were saying to me.
I was saying, could she suffer from mind chatter?
Oh, yeah. And lots of mental chatter. A very, very busy mind. She came from a family of musicians and learned things quick and learned them early. Besides playing the drums, she could play the piano very well. So she was a multi-instrumentalist, and I think that takes a certain kind of mind, as well as some innate talent and starting young. And an extremely unusual person. Unique. I have never met anyone anything like Sarah. And I wish I could find a better picture of her playing. This is decades after the first picture, and I was looking for one in which the drumsticks are a total blur, because that's what you would see. But I did get one where the hair is being tossed, and notice it isn't quite as Dr. Zeusy as it was before. And this is as, you should pardon the word, straight as I've ever seen Sarah look. This was her wedding day. And she was quite happy. She married a music professor at UNC who specialized in drums, and they got along like a house on fire. Here is another Mercury in the first house person. As a skipper, he is a firestorm of energy, ranting, cursing, and praising. Now, that sounds like somebody who races sailboats, which is something that he did. And you have to keep, I think with airplanes and sailboats, you have to be paying attention a lot. A whole lot to what is happening. You have to be aware of your surroundings at all times and very observant, which is a trait of Mercury. An eye for detail is another part of Mercury. And I think the U.S. Cup trials, people spend a lot of time trying to figure out how they can make their boats lighter and faster. And here's Mr. Turner. This is the chart of a media giant. He was a co-founded CNN. And was very involved with all kinds of media. We have the TED, I don't know what the Ted Turner channel is now being caused, but he was pretty involved with things starting to be streamed online. So definitely had his fingers in a lot of media pies. And that, I suppose, had to do a bit with the 10th house Mars making a sextile to the Mercury. So I'm not surprised he was a sportsman. And I'm not surprised that he did some racing. This is a chart that likes to explore Sagittarius rising, Mercury and Sagittarius in the first house. And that's Jupiter on the cusp of the third. When you have Jupiter in the third, you like new experiences. You're curious. You feel good when new facts are coming into your brain. So it backs up and bolsters the Mercury on the first house cusp. We are also going to talk about Mars in the first house. Archetypally, Mars is the warrior, the pioneer, the survivor, the daredevil, the hero or heroine, the athlete, the competitor. Mars is in the chart is somewhat like adrenaline in the body. It rules adrenaline, I'm quite sure, and it has to do with our developing healthy assertiveness rather than overdoing aggression, developing good, solid boundaries to protect ourselves and sometimes to protect others. Mars is also our drive. If you were a car, Mars would be your engine. And the kind of fuel your Mars needs is represented by the sign that Mars is in. If Mars is prominent in your chart, you need to develop a strong will, a lot of resolve, and not to chicken out in any fundamental way. To develop courage, take risks, break ground. Mars also rules physical sexuality and libido. With the Sun, I think Mars rules the metabolism and the basic constitution of the person. If we underdevelop our Mars, then we experience more fear and terror than we need to. I'm intrigued by the fact that the 2 moons of Mars, which are both very small, are named Phobos and Deimos, which means fear and terror. And fear and terror can definitely accompany Mars. Mars can scare other people, or if you have not developed your own Mars enough, you can spend a lot of time being scared. An underdeveloped Mars can be a coward or a peacemonger as opposed to a warmonger, not have good boundaries, not have strong willpower, and not be particularly energetic because the person isn't giving themselves the fuel that their Mars needs. And I think another manifestation of an underdeveloped Mars is being a bully. It's harassing somebody else with whom there is an imbalance of power so that the underdeveloped Mars harasser can feel more Marsy himself or herself. Most bullies are cowards. People with Mars in the first. Come on, let me get back to where I was. Oh, please, don't do this to me again.
Don't Trump have Mars first on his ascendant?
I think he does.
When that happens, you should be able to just
To what?
when you use your arrows to go upwards, goes backwards in the presentation.
So upwards goes backwards.
Should be like it's downwards, left or right. So to the left.
People with Mars in the first house, what do they need? They need to move. If you have a prominent Mars, it's in the first house, it aspects your sun. I think even if it's sitting in an angular house and not doing anything else, if Mars is strong in your chart, you need to move. You need activity. You need exercise to keep feeling your best. You may need more exercise than you actually want, but you will feel better with some exercise. They need to set healthy boundaries with other people as soon as they experience the need to set them. And be good at setting them. Healthy boundaries, not underdone or overdone. They need adventures, preferably of their own choosing. They need to find some kind of middle ground that works for them between risk-taking and good reality testing. Some risks are too crazy to take, but they do need to avoid chickening out. Other people sometimes can goad them into taking a risk that they really shouldn't take. So they need to be a little careful about not responding to crazy dares. Sometimes they need to work on controlling their temper. That's usually more of an issue in childhood. They need some harmless competition once in a while. If they take up a sport or a hobby, they probably will enjoy the competitive ones more than the non-competitive ones. They also need to recognize that not all people have the same amount of energy that they do. Sometimes I feel like handing out a little disc to everyone I know with Mars in the first house. You have much more energy than most people do. So sometimes they need to slow down to let other people catch up with them. And they need to learn to relax so they can be comfortable in environments that are not dynamic and active and challenging too. And finally, something I heard from Ram Dass I think is important. Mars rules the libido, and they need to try not to divide humanity into 3 groups. The sexually attractive, the people who are competing with you for the sexually attractive, and group number 3, the irrelevant. I'll never forget the first time I heard that. Everybody in the audience was relatively young and kind of squirming. Anybody know who this is? You probably have a clue from his name tag on his spacesuit.
Neil Armstrong.
Yes, it's Neil Armstrong, the first person to walk on the moon.
It's the Neil.
And I'd say, look at his face. That's a steady gaze. It's not hostile, but that's a strong gaze and a strong countenance. He looks solid. He looks determined. He does not look like somebody I would want to cross. And Mars in the first house people need to radiate that if someone crosses them, the someone will probably regret it. I refer to this as letting their bark be worse than their bite. If you have Mars in the first house, you need a good bark, and that will save you from having to bite. And I think he was mission commander of Apollo 11. Most astronauts came out of the military. I believe he was a test pilot. So was James Lovell, the Apollo 13 commander. And I think it takes unbelievable courage to be an astronaut. Here's another picture of him getting tested over by doctors. This was part of one of the Gemini missions he was supposed to go on before Apollo. So he's younger, but what I think I'm seeing here is a strong person who knows he has to go through some stuff and is being paid through some details and physicals and prep, and doesn't like it much, but is accepting it and being patient as best he can. I think those are the eyes of somebody who would like to have this over with so he could go do something else, but he is being patient. And, come on, here is his chart. And look at Mars in Gemini in the first house, and the moon in Sag in the 7th. This person was sort of born to explore. Very, very curious, that Gemini-Sagittarius blend. The more that Neil Armstrong could explore and experience and ask questions and get answers, the happier he was going to be. That much is pretty clear. I'm intrigued that an astronaut has a Mercury-Neptune conjunction. Sometimes those are not the most left-brained people on the planet. And I note that it squares his ascendant, a Gemini ascendant ruled by Mercury. However, it still indicates an awful lot of curiosity. When I talk about needing to be brave, I'm sorry I can't see the top of this unless I move everybody over here. You can see more of it now. This is all of the stuff that was part of Neil Armstrong's spacesuit. It's all in the picture. I don't even know what all of these things are. It took me a while of staring at it and thinking about it to try to figure it out. So this is how it looked when he put it on and got into the rocket. That is how it looked when he got back. This spacesuit has been through some things, and he was wearing gloves that went in through these armholes, by the way. You can see them in the last picture, but you just see the wrist cuffs and not the fingers. So that's kind of a big difference. Not only that, you're in a spaceship which is a thin layer of metal between you and a cosmic vacuum that is freezing and has no air. You're hurtling through space at an incredible number of miles an hour. You are hoping that the moon is going to be where she is supposed to be according to mission control. They landed on the moon with the computing power only equivalent to that of a Commodore 64. If any of you know something about computers or have a few years on you, you may remember Commodore 64s. It may have been your first computer, and that's what got us to the moon and back. That is astonishing to me. And they have to land, they have to let their capsule be released from the rocket, and that capsule had been through a lot. Look how banged up it is with things hitting it in space. And trust it to come into the water and you to be able to come out and get in a raft and that people will come and pick you up. So from beginning to end, I think that took enormous courage. And this is another Mars in the first house person. Does anyone know who this is?
Is that Mary Tudor?
Yes, it is. This, I don't recall who did this portrait. I don't think it's Holbein. Holbein did portraits of Anne Boleyn, and I don't know if he ever did Mary Tudor. The style is similar, but I imagine the style of portraiture would have been similar in a lot of paintings of the day. Now, in this face, I see some determination, and I see a kind of don't mess with me attitude. I would not want to cross this person either. I think that mouth is set rather firmly, almost as if she's clenching her teeth when this is being painted. Also, as I look at her eyes, sometimes people's faces look a little bit different on the left side versus the right side. And I think I'm seeing some of that here. And what that is supposed to mean in the world of body work is some sort of inner conflict, generally between the left brain and the right brain. I don't know if we can apply that to the 16th century, but the difference in the eyes is still a little noticeable to me. And she had her father Henry VIII's red hair. And like her mother, Henry's first wife, Catherine of Aragon, she was a very, very, very devout Catholic, as was her mother. And here is why she was called Bloody Mary. Her father, Henry VIII, broke with the Pope and the Catholic Church and founded the Church of England in order to be the head of the Church of England so that he could declare himself divorced from of Aragon and leave himself free to marry Anne Boleyn. So that was the beginning of the Church of England. It was Protestant. And in the early part of the Reformation, there was a great deal of persecution of Protestants, and then when Protestants got into power, there was persecution of Catholics. He did some purging of the clergy from there. Great. Okay, I need to reduce this. Okay, what's going on? Okay, so a bit of background. England went back and forth between Protestantism, Church of England, and Catholicism. After he died, his Edward took the throne, and Edward was rather sickly and also a Protestant. And the Protestants in this particular conflict in Tudor England. And when he died, Mary was next in the succession, but Protestants pretty prominent in the cabinet at that point, and they were afraid if Mary Tudor took the throne that she would try to reinstate Catholicism. It would be a horrible conflict. So they decided to find a granddaughter of the mother of James I, who was a cousin of the Tudors, and make Lady Jane Grey King of England for 9 days. At point, Mary went and rose an army from Catholics and marched on London, and London surrendered immediately. Lady Grey went to the Tower. The people who had set up the Protestant coup went to the Tower, and because Mary suspected her half-sister Elizabeth of complicity, Elizabeth also went to the Tower of London. So once she took power, she made it illegal to be a Protestant, and heretics were punished by being burned to death. During 5 years in power, about 300 Protestants were executed, and many, many fled the country. So that religious conflict hurt her reputation and made her keep the label of Bloody Mary. I suspect she must have been a rather sad person. Mars in the first house, so is a Mercury-Neptune conjunction, and she was a Pisces with a Virgo moon, just into full. That's like a minutes left in the waxing gibbous. And her faith was extremely important to her, as her mother. I suspect she felt fairly insecure about her seat on the throne and her ability to retain it, which is why she went about trying to boot Protestants out of England or to eliminate them. Sometimes the second house sun feels rather insecure in its position. I suspect that her faith was so strong that it made it a little difficult for her to listen to wise counsel, that the burnings and the exiles were not making her a popular figure and probably were weakening her reign in the long run instead of supporting it. But I think she was so focused on her faith. Mercury Neptune sometimes has a very powerful faith. That's what mattered. And she also has an angular Jupiter, which can make issues of faith important. She was pretty horrified by from her mother. And there was a point, I think, when Henry was still alive, that he married to declare that her mother was not the queen and was the true queen, and that Mary herself was a Protestant. And she flat out refused to do it, which took courage, I think. I don't know if Henry would have stooped to murdering his own daughter, but given his track record, it must have been on her mind. I chat. I'm sorry. Power to imagine possibilities. Oh, yes. Yeah, power to imagine possibilities. And I'm sure that in her mind, she was restoring the Holy Roman Catholic Church to England and benefiting everybody in the country thereby. She wasn't a particularly realistic person. There were a lot of jockeying for who was going to marry. And British law at the time meant that whoever she married was going to become King of England and had the right to everything that Mary owned. So the court was very upset when she married Prince Philip of Spain, another Catholic monarch, and they both intended to restore Catholicism to England. Philip was not particularly interested in her as a person. He just wanted a Catholic monarch as his wife. Mary knew that she needed to further the dynasty, so she tried very, very hard to get pregnant. And came a time, I think in 1555, maybe a couple years later, when she was sure she was pregnant. She would get up in the morning and be sick to her stomach every morning, and she was getting larger, her belly was growing, but 9 months turned into 10, 11, 12, 13, and her belly deflated. There's a lot of speculation about why this happened. It might have been what's called a hysterical pregnancy. It might have been ovarian cysts that burst, went down. It might have been ovarian cancer. All these things can cause swelling of the abdomen. And so can being technically called a hysterical personality. And I'm not saying she was hysterical in the use of that term. It's sort of a weird form of, not really hypochondria. I don't know if there's such a thing as pregnancy chondria, but she does twice. And both times she wasn't pregnant and there was no issue to the union. I suspect she was very emotional. Full moon people tend to be. And I think she genuinely loved Philip. And that first house, Mars, is opposing a Jupiter which likely expanded it. And the way she reacted to perceived threats to her faith, which was pretty much everything to her, she just to stamp out these opponents of her faith. She was, I think, incredibly suspicious of all Protestants and Protestantism, given what her father had done to her mother. And when Mary died, went on to Elizabeth. And I think England was extremely happy to have a Protestant monarch. Okay, have some time for Q&A. It's fine if there are anything anybody would like me to go back to.
Jodie,
Yes?
do you find with Mars in the first house, people have sometimes issues with temperature of bodies?
Yeah, I think so. I think they tend to run a little bit more hot than the rest of us. That would be my guess. You know, Mars may do that too.
What about health things, subject headache or other bits and pieces?
Well, with possibly headaches, possibly problems with the adrenals.
Okay.
Those might be health problems. I think those are probably more common with Mars in the 6th. What's a 6, I think, shows the organ systems that are likely to be the canaries in the coal mine and have problems if you're under extreme stress. Okay. And Mars in the first house people sometimes take way more stress than they can actually handle. And, I mean, want to give up, they don't want to give in, and some of them will keep going until they drop.
Do you find that depending on how strong that Mars is, especially by rules, detriment, falls, etc., how it affected?
Yeah, so. A well-dignified Mars is harder for the person to develop and embrace, but we can learn these things. There's the thing as healthy assertiveness. Mm-hmm. Kind of funny, but I think both Libra and Aries sometimes need assertiveness training refreshers because Aries can overdo it and Libra can underdo it.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not in the first house.
Yeah.
It's on the 11th. So if it's 15, I definitely jump in.
If things aren't what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Understand that. Very well. Unfairness is really hard to deal with.
Like people with Mars in the first house is sometimes can be a little bit pushy and word for it.
Overbearing?
Yeah, overbearing, but even a bit, like not knowledgeable, but they're, I couldn't say they find forever wrong.
Oh, yes. Mars is confident.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, we got sometimes mistaken, but never in doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, be overconfident, can be cocky, can have a chip on the shoulder, or can just have a quiet determination to do what they agreed to do.
And I think that might be what you're saying, like, that might have more to Mars and Capricorn with a Capricorn rising, rather than Aries with an Aries rising.
Yeah, Capricorn rising will do what it feels it is its duty to do.
Yeah. I was nearly going to say, do you want to quick through what you think, say, Mercury needs the signs and Mars needs the signs would work, or we don't have time?
Oh, I think we have time.
Okay. The people doesn't have to hear my feedback.
Okay. Notice a big difference between the Mars in Sagittarius, Ted Turner, and the Mars in Aquarius, Sarah the drummer. Sarah backed up by having everything but the kitchen sink in Aquarius. But it's still, she could be a poster child for Mercury in Aquarius in the first house, which is why I included her here. Mercury Pisces in the first house will probably come across as more gentle, more curious, more imaginative, having a somewhat softer self-presentation. And what we are interested in also relates to what Mercury is doing in our charts. So Sarah was interested in some very unusual subjects for women: woodworking, drumming, puppetry. And Pisces in the first house would probably be interested in what Pisces rules. Compassion. I think with Cancer it co-rules the imagination. And for inner work, for inner searching, a need for trying to figure out if there's something beyond this life. That belongs to Mercury in Pisces. So that's sort of a spiritual seeker kind of a Mercury. And I suspect it will be harder for Mercury in Pisces and Mercury in Libra not identify with the thoughts and opinions of people that they are talking to. Because Pisces and Libra can both over-identify with the other person and start to think that they are the other person. Their needs are the other person's needs. Mercury Aries in the first, well, thinking of a friend with that configuration, and she wanted to learn how to sail, but she didn't want to take any lessons by God. She was just going to take this little skiff and sail it across Cayuga and learn by doing. I think Mercury in Fire is big on learning by doing. And of course she capsized and had to swim back in and bring the boat back in. And at that point she was willing to take a few lessons. But I think Mercury in Aries likes to just jump feet first into what it wants to learn and what it wants to do. They're not the most patient of the Mercury signs, so receiving instruction may seem to them a waste of time. They're pretty sure they can figure it out themselves. So there's the confidence of Aries too. Mercury Taurus has a different kind of feeling. Mercury Earth tends to work more slowly than Mercury in Fire or Air. And Mercury in Earth, especially if there's a lot of other Earth in the chart, tends to be pragmatic. It tends to be practical. Once it can weigh and measure and touch, is unlikely to believe things that it has no evidence for. Mercury Taurus in the first will communicate slowly, probably after some consideration, with the minimal amount of verbiage necessary, unless Mercury is conjunct Jupiter in the first house. They can be just as curious and observant as other first house Mercury signs, but they tend to be quieter about it. Taurus is probably the least verbal of the signs. Mercury Gemini in the first. Well, people are talkative. They're teachers. They're also born students. They to be curious about almost everything, and they want to use the first house Mercury do a lot of talking, and they're glib and articulate. And I wouldn't want to get into a war of wits with somebody with Mercury in Gemini on the first house cusp, because I'd probably lose. They're quick. Sometimes can get a little bit scattered. One of the occupational hazards of any planet in Gemini can be that thinking, I am a thought form, I connect to anything outside the world of ideas. When there are 4 elements, and there are 3 others besides air, and we all need to have some acquaintance with all 4 of these elements in some way, if possible. Mercury in Cancer first. This is somebody who can observe people and probably pick up on their deepest wounds, pick up on how they're feeling. And I think with maturity and some years under their belt, they're very good at saying things that are healing and supportive. They may also, if they're experiencing cancer as the clingy form of cancer, if they fear empty nest syndrome, they may also be very good at trying to convince people why they shouldn't move out, or they shouldn't leave home, or they shouldn't go to college across the country. Much depends on their response to the sign. That will affect how their Mercury expresses itself. So it's a curious Mercury. It's a Mercury that likes to learn through symbols and likes to teach through symbols. Mercury and Leo in the first. If I see a client with that configuration, I try to allow extra time because I know they will be quite talkative and full of stories. And I know I'll probably have fun doing the reading, but I better not schedule anything after it. Sometimes these people have lovely voices. I suppose there's such a thing as a solar voice, as well as a solar chart. And it can be quite creative with words. Mercury and Leo in the first can be a rather commanding sometimes. And Mercury and Virgo in the first. Well, this is sort of a technician's Mercury. I think of Mercury and Virgo as the engineering Mercury, or the administration Mercury, the research Mercury, and Mercury in Gemini is more the intellectual side of Mercury. So Mercury and Virgo in the first. These would be people who who want to communicate effectively, and they tend to be quite good with details and good at making order out of chaos. They may also be quite critical, and it's important to remember, if a Mercury in Virgo in the first has just tongue-lashed you, that they are probably more critical of themselves than they are of anybody else. And they may be projecting onto you things that they actually think and feel about themselves. They're organized. They have an excellent eye and memory for details. They may get lost in the weeds of details and overteach details. I think what this Mercury sign probably most enjoys is feeling useful and creating something that works out of nothing or out of chaos. Mercury in Libra in the first. This is a Mercury that notices beauty, notices relationships, notices other people, is curious about what makes other people tick. They may find it a little bit hard to issue criticism, unlike Mercury in Virgo. With Mercury in Libra, no matter how angry you are, it's you open your mouth to say something and suddenly Miss Manners appears right behind your teeth and says, "Now, is that a nice thing to say? Would that do any good? Is that tasteful?" Or whatever Miss Manners says. So it may be difficult for Mercury in Libra to learn to level when it really needs to level with someone. Sometimes Mercury in Libra dislikes confrontations enough that they send someone else off to make the confrontive speech. Rats. Mercury in Scorpio in the first. This is not somebody I would want to argue with. Mercury in Scorpio in the first can have a very, very sharp tongue. Mercury in Scorpio has a predisposition to think, whatever's happening, there's a deeper reason than that. There's something deeper underneath this. We're not at the core kernel of meaning yet. I need to go and deeper. How do I feel today? I feel about feeling that way, and on. Mercury in Scorpio can be very frank, very direct, and since Scorpio is a fixed sign, I think fixed Mercuries tend to be rather firm in their opinions.
Could it be somebody that's interested in the occult?
Oh, sure. If you have Mercury in Scorpio, you very likely are interested in the occult or in hidden learning, or there's something that you want to get to the bottom of and know a whole lot more about, and the occult is one of the typical topics. Mercury and Sag in the first. Well, we saw Mr. Ted Turner, the maniacal boat racer. Mercury in Sagittarius can sort of get the bit between its teeth and make speeches if it feels that something is not fair. And it's a very curious Mercury, like Mercury in Gemini, and it really wants the world to make sense. And life doesn't always make sense, the world doesn't always make sense, but Mercury in Sagittarius wishes that it did. They tend to be good at seeing the overall scheme of things and have a little bit more trouble with details. They may have some trouble seeing the trees for the forest, in other words. It's likely a very curious Mercury with a wide-ranging collection of interests. Mercury in Sagittarius can sometimes be rather blunt. And occasionally, especially if the person is younger, I'm a little bit clueless. If we get to Mercury in Capricorn in the first, this is someone who probably doesn't like idle small talk for no reason. Mercury in Cap in the first wants to communicate effectively, for a purpose, for a reason, and have that purpose or that reason carried out. Mercury in Capricorn likes to learn by looking at the essential structure of something. It often wants an overall view of the subject before it gets into the details. Wants to see how all the parts fit into the whole. And like other Earth Mercuries, it is pragmatic. It's practical. And it may look at a subject and say, well, that's fascinating, but could I use it? Do I want to learn this just for the sheer joy of learning it, or is there a practical use I could put it to? Mercury in Aquarius in the first, we have already talked about, and I think that's probably where I began. I do have a story to tell you, though, about Mercuries and learning. A friend of mine is retired from teaching 5th grade, and she and the other teachers decided to do a kind of learning experiment with the kids. And they drew a circle, chalk circle on the playground, and she divided the kids up into 4 groups according to what element their Mercuries were in. She was an amateur astrologer and had access to all their birth data, so she knew. And then she told them, you need to figure out a way for all of you to stand in this circle at the same time. And Mercury and Earth spent a lot of time sort of putting their feet in and taking their feet out and maybe standing on one foot and just wondering how wide the circle was and was this actually possible. A lot of measuring and experimenting and thinking. Mercury and Air did some debating about what did this mean, have everybody in the circle at the same time. And was there a way that they could logically do this? Mercury and Water thought about it for a while and then gave up and listened to what other people were doing. And it was the Mercury and Fire kids who solved this. They stood in a circle with their arms around each other, and they moved in a circle so that everybody had 1 foot within the circle at all times, and they kept moving. Mercury in Fire learns by doing and likes experiential learning. So I'm not surprised that a task that took the physical world and also motion was the answer to the conundrum, and the Mercury and Fire kids figured it out. And I once heard a very funny lecture by Liz Green. She was talking about doing an experiment with a course she was teaching, and she got some really yummy snacks and put them all up at the front of the room and said, well, before I get going on the lecture, I've got some treats for you here, so just come on up and get them. So she could watch what everybody did. The Mercury and Aries people were there first. Mercury and Taurus either muttered about their diet or went over slowly and picked out something sweet and gooey. Mercury and Gemini might have been so excited about the course that they just ignored the food. They were ready for the information to start. Mercury and Cancer might have wondered how long the food had been out and was it safe. but it sure looked good, and gone over and picked out a favorite comfort food. Mercury and Leo also would not have been slow to go up there and get something, and might have been mildly annoyed if its favorite snack had already been preempted. Mercury in Virgo might have thought to itself, sugar. Sugar is white death, and may not have gotten up. Mars in Virgo, may not have gotten up to get anything to eat for health reasons. Mars in Libra was my favorite part. Mars in Libra looked at the person next to them and said, "Would you mind getting me something from up there? Have somebody else do the work instead of the Mars in Libra person doing it." That was fascinating. And Mars in Scorpio went to get what it wanted and might have tried to do some bargaining with other Mercuries who had something that the Mercury in Scorpio liked better. Mercury in Sagittarius might have wondered how the snacks were going to fit into the lesson and what they were talking about today, and come up with all kinds of theories about what the lesson might be that day. Probably went up and got something to eat. Maybe so, maybe not. Mars in Capricorn might have gone up to the table and found something as least harmful and most nourishing as possible. Mars in Aquarius might already have snitched something off of the table when it walked into the room. And Mars in Pisces might sit and look at the table and wonder if it should get something, and think about it and go through all the reasons why, all the positives and all the negatives, and finally maybe move slowly over to the table to pick up something. The first. Well, I did a reading once for a triple Aries woman who had Mars on her Aries ascendant. And again, she had an overloaded Aries first house, but I was talking about energy and the need to move and the need to set herself challenges. And she started laughing and said, "I have so much energy that I go to the gym every single day to try to work it off. I have to." She said, "I haven't met a man with as much energy as I have." And it's kind of annoying, but I am what I am, and I'm trying to give myself all of the movement that I need. I could also imagine that being in the chart of a Marine on the front lines. Mars and Taurus in the first house. Sometimes we assert ourselves for and through the things of the sign that Mars is in. And Mars in Taurus will complain if it is not comfortable. It wants to be comfortable, and it will make an effort toward being comfortable. It likes common sense. That person's energy is fed, its Mars engine is fed by Taurus material, by being outside, being in nature, doing something creative, often making something very physical in a creative way. And Mars in Taurus may assert itself to try to defend some of the chicken soup wisdoms of life. It's often a rather traditionally moved person. Mars in Gemini in the first will make an effort to explore everything it's curious about. It will get angry if it feels that somebody is trying to censor it. It will get angry if it feels that its freedom or movement or activity is being restricted, or it's being told what to think. That's a big one with Mars in Gemini. It likes intellectual challenges. Maybe this person is a member of Mensa and aggressively tells people about it. It can be competitive. Mars in Cancer in the first. This person may be rather self-protective. Much depends on whether Gemini is rising or Cancer is rising or some other sign is rising. The water signs are not very comfortable on the ascendant, I think. But if Mars is there and Cancer is rising, the person is going to say, "Oh, thank God, I have something to bark with, and I will use this to protect myself. The best defense is a good offense." Mars in Cancer can also get extremely mother bear-ish about protecting and defending other people whom it thinks need protecting and defending. This person can be incredibly nurturing and sensitive and understanding, but an uncomfortable emotion is probably more likely to agitate these people, to make them think, "This doesn't feel right. I need to say something about this." There may be, sometimes we're scared of what our Mars represents. There's a need for a rich, busy, active life of the mind, not just the body, with this Mars sign. Mars and Leo in the first. Well, this sounds to me like the captain of the king's guard, so to speak. There's dignity. There's a larger-than-life quality, generally, to Leo rising. And this person will look very self-confident, sometimes more self-confident than he or she feels. What's worth asserting the self for? Matters of pride, matters of honor, claiming some downtime, the need for some downtime. I think that this Mars likes to guide younger people to explore something that the Mars in Leo already knows about. And this person may have some performing energy. They may be scared to perform, but it might be quite good for them to share something of their inner lives or inner spirits with other people. Read that poem at the open mic event. Use your Mars. You might be scared to do it, but feel the fear and do it anyway. Mars in Virgo in the first. This person can be extremely critical and may need to rein that in from time to time, especially when somebody is at the very beginning of a project or the beginning of an idea. You can kill that project or ideas by leaping in and criticizing it and pointing out everything the person hasn't thought of yet. The Mars in Virgo in the first house person is probably trying to be helpful, but sometimes may need to learn that ideally something is critiqued after the first draft or the first iteration is done, not right at the beginning of the project. These people can be extremely hardworking if they're in the right work. If they're not in the right work, they may get rather bitter and resentful about it. Mars in Libra in the first, I suspect the person who asked her seatmate to go up and get the goodie for her had Mars in Libra in the first. Mars in Libra is sensitive to other people and wants to be fair. That energy strikes me as someone who would be a good mediator, a good conflict resolution guide, a good negotiator, because the Libra personal skills are used to move forward with the negotiations that need to happen. Also, this person may be very devoted to one of the creative arts and spend a lot of time with it. Maybe a dancer. A strong Mars often produces a rather athletic person. Jupiter in the first house. Mars in, Scorpio in the first house. Mars in Scorpio in the first house can look a little scary to other people. Mars in the first house has a very steady gaze and confidence and a certain amount of reserve, often a very penetrating gaze. And people who meet the Mars in Scorpio in the first house person may feel he or she can see right through me. They can see right through me. I might as well confess and tell them about me because they know everything anyway. They can see it all. So sometimes Mars in Scorpio in the first gets all kinds of unsolicited confessions from people next to them in the seat on the airplane. They may apply a lot of Mars energy toward exploring scorpionic subjects. If they get mad, they can be rather vengeful. They should wait to discuss a difficult situation with somebody until they've had time to sort through all of their feelings about it and calm down. Mars in Scorpio if it's decided to come after you, it knows how to do it because it may have assessed you for your weaknesses and for your psychological glitches, for your biggest fears. Mars in Capricorn in the first. This person feels to me like a strategist. Their ability to think and plan strategically and then exert effort and bravery and courage and will to make something well planned happen. That sounds to me like Mars in Capricorn in the first. It's kind of a chess player's Mars. Always thinking many moves ahead. Many, many moves ahead. And the person, if Mars is in your first house, you need to move, you need adventures. If Mars in Capricorn is in your first house, you need those adventures planned. And they might require a whole lot of machinery or learning or training or steps to figure out how to master this. Mars is a warrior, Capricorn is a strategist. You put Mars in Capricorn, and that's why I think Mars is exalted in Capricorn. because it doesn't just blunder into something blindly, lose its temper, and start swinging. It thinks about things first. And Mars in Aquarius in the first. This person will probably look very, very different, or their energy body will seem different to other people. And the more rigid and traditional the other people are, the more the Mars in Aquarius in the first person may seem scary and have a little trouble getting accepted. Just with Aquarius rising and no planets in it, well, any Aquarius rising, probably half of the people this person meets on any given day in his or her life are going to think he or she is wrong about something. So Mars in Aquarius in the first needs to have a pretty thick skin about people thinking it's strange, or unusual, or dangerous, or radical, or just plain wrong. And since Aquarius is a fixed sign, it needs to stick to its guns and carry out the projects that it feels called to do. And Mars in Pisces, there's an astrologer named J-A-Y-J, Jacobs, who once said in a lecture that Mars in Pisces is like trying to hammer a nail with a fish instead of a hammer. And I like that. Mars in Pisces will assert itself for having a rich inner life. It will assert itself from compassion with other people, rather like Mars in Cancer. It will assert itself to make sure it has enough downtime and time alone and time to meditate or daydream. And I think this Mars sign likes to have a periodic retreat, likes to have some time alone. That would be Mercury and Mars through the signs, and I have gone a bit over. If there are no more questions, I guess I will be closing.
Thanks, Jodie.
You're very welcome. We will be doing this again in several more weeks, and I'll be talking about Jupiter and Saturn in the first.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
Sorry?
Look forward to it. My son has a Jupiter Saturn conjunction in the first.
Oh, yeah.
So that'll be interesting.
Yes,
but it has a sign.
How a sign makes a difference. It's still a conjunction, but it's a watered down conjunction. There's a comment in the chat here I wanted to see. Come on, chat.
Melissa's saying.
Melissa said that she speaks several languages and has been a Tibetan Buddhist for 50 years. Well, good for you, Melissa. That's wonderful.
I think he's left.
Well, that's great that she speaks several languages. I'm envious.
All right. Thanks, Jodie.
You're welcome, everybody, and see you again soon. Bye-bye. Hey, Teresa. Bye-bye.